It's a black hole! We'll never get out of it! Pull us out! No!
You're listening to Tonebender's Sound Design Podcast, presented by Sound Ideas. This is the show where we talk with the sonic artists behind our favorite films, games, and series. As the new year begins, Sound Ideas is offering its largest sale to date. For a limited time, receive 55% off professionally recorded sound effects and music libraries. This New Year promotion applies across their esteemed catalog, making it an ideal moment to expand or update your professional collection with authentic audio and a proven standard of quality. The Sound Ideas New Year's sale is available now for a limited time, so go visit sound-ideas.com right away. Hello and welcome to Tonebenders. My name is Tim Muirhead. Welcome to this episode with the sound team behind last summer's hit film, Superman. The reboot of the classic comic book character by director James Gunn takes a new approach with a healthy dose of humor and charm added into the mix of action and world-ending level stakes. The sound team for this film was tasked with not only evolving the sounds of the Man of Steel, but also many other superheroes like Green Lantern, Hawkgirl, Mr. Terrific, each with their own sets of powers. Plus, the planet is being literally ripped apart. What does that sound like? The people who were enlisted with figuring all this out join me today, starting with the production sound mixer, Lee Orloff. Lee was last on Tonebenders back on episode 240 to talk about his work on the film Ferrari. Lee, it's great to have you back on. How are you today?
I'm great. Thanks, Tim, for having me. It's nice to be back.
We also have the film's supervising sound editors. Katie Wood is making her third appearance on Tonebenders. It's wonderful to talk to you again, Katie. Great to see you.
It's great to be here. Thanks very much, Tim.
In addition to being a supervising sound editor, David Accord was also one of the sound designers. I last talked to David about his work on one of my favorite shows and/or one of my favorite episodes of Tonebenders. So it's great to have you back, David. It's good to see you. Thanks for coming back on.
Thanks for having me.
And now we have the film's two re-recording mixers. We have Chris Boys, who is on the sound effects end and Foley end of the board. Welcome back, Chris. You were last on for episode 291 just a year ago for Twister, so it's great to talk to you again.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
And finally, on the other end of the mixing desk doing dialogue and music, we have Tim LeBlanc. Tim, this is your first time talking with me. It's great to meet you.
Great meeting you too. Yeah, it's my first time on the show. Thanks for having us.
Let's start with the idea of the pocket dimension. This is something that's kind of a brand new concept. So it can sound like whatever the heck you want it to sound like. There's a million different directions that it can go in. Plus, within the pocket dimension, there's a river made out of some kind of antimatter cubes. What does that sound like? There's also a black hole sucking everything into the end of the river. What does that sound like? There's also huge music on the dialogue side. There's very important dialogue being said, plus a baby crying the entire time. Maybe we can start with you, David. How do you come up with and collaborate with the director on what this kind of world is going to sound like? And then where do you start putting it together?
There's a back and forth, a dialogue that happens between the sound designer and the director and the picture editors. Very early on in the process, when you're talking about giant set pieces like the River Pie, as you mentioned. So there's a lot of discussion about what it can sound like and does it evolve as we get towards the black hole, and what are all of the individual pieces? What are those things, and do they, have their own sort of sound when they crash together? All these things are sort of discussed early on, and then I start generating ideas and sending those ideas off to the picture department and to James to listen to and give feedback on, and it's just a bit of a back and forth with the river in particular. Early on, James wanted it to be this sort of, the river to sound like an angry math equation. And it just, that's sort of the direction, this kind of digital vibe to it. But when the cubes themselves are smashing or crashing together, that they're a little more glassy or icy sounding and a little more tactile.
Lee, what was that scene like to shoot on set where I am assuming everything was a green screen, I guess.
There's a lot of different parts to it. The river was actually very inventively designed to be an enormous tank full of plastic balls, which were horrendously loud, but they gave the perfect amount of ballast and lift to David as he was trying to escape in the cubes. So, he had something to fight against. They were just horrific and literally just couldn't wait for lunch on those days.
Because of the volume of the balls, you mean?
Yeah, I mean, there was tens of thousands of them. And we got them, I think, in a little bag as a gift at the end of the show, just to remind ourselves of the fun. They're also on rigs, so they're being suspended on stunt rigs off of cranes. So there's all kinds of fun that goes on in production during that. You want to keep perspective, so there's booms and there's close lobs for everything. And I can tell by the work that was done that Katie and everyone else tried to do what they could to maintain as much of the production dialogue in that scene as possible.
Katie, do you want to take it from there?
Sure. I mean, as Lee said, it was those scenes where Superman's in the river, were incredibly loud with background and costume kind of sound. But, he was also projecting a lot. So he was screaming out either to Crypto or to Rex, fighting. And so we had a combination of ADR replacing production and some production that still we managed to preserve because there was just enough level in the voice that we could squish out all the other sounds.
Fortunately, there's a lot of other racket going on to hide behind.
The baby in that scene is an alien baby. Were you tempted to come up with sounds that were not at all like human babies? That's kind of where he ended up landing, is pretty similar to a human baby.
It's a human baby. We floated the idea early on of an alien-sounding baby. Didn't really get a lot of traction. I think that the idea was the more alien it sounds, then kind of the less attached to it or sort of instinctually protective of it the audience becomes. You know what I mean? You hear a real baby cry, every human reacts to that sound. It's an instinctual thing. If you get too far away from that, too alien, then you're more emotionally distant from it.
Chris, you want to talk about how you approach mixing the sound effects for a scene where so much stuff is happening? How do you make room for it all? Because these are all new sounds for the audience. So we have to establish them so the audience understands what they are. So they have to have enough presence for that, but also not enough presence so that they're just beating each other up between the black hole and the river and the baby screaming. And
that was a really difficult sequence to mix, just specifically because of what you just said. I guess the first thing is you sort of have to figure out the language of the movie and the language of the moment in the movie. Obviously, selling the river was key, but it's also the kind of sound that could eat up a lot of the other components that are going on visually on the screen. It was a real dance. You obviously want the river to be this powerful thing that feels like it could even, overwhelm our hero, who happens to be a very strong individual, as well as this precariousness of the baby in that situation, which then also hands over to a black hole, which has to be the most powerful thing in the world. And sometimes the most powerful thing in the world, to make it powerful, is not necessarily to make it loud, but give it a place to live in such a way that the audience can understand it and believe it for what it is. At the same time, we've got this pretty powerful score, just dancing in and out of the elements, letting pieces enunciate and then fall back so that you could hear the distant impact of some of the, soldiers being thrown off, or finding a place to hand over to give the black hole enough energy so that it really sold what it was, and falling away out of everything else. You could even describe it as a ballet, because you've got all this great material, all of which sounds really cool in and of itself, but only can live for a moment and pieces of it, so that you hold together, the dialogue and the music, which have to keep pinned to the screen with the emotional component there. So, it was one of the tougher sequences I've mixed. And you also have to sort of, as you approach it, look at it and say, I really want to hear that sound, but it can't work here because it's not the most important component that I need to sell on my side.
Tim, do you want to talk about?
Sure. Yeah, it was definitely a tricky dance, especially from the moment that Superman gets clobbered and lands into the river. we decided to make that a sound effects leading section and where it had a chance, because after that there's a lot of really wide shots with dialogue that's important, tons of visual elements, and a driving score. So it's as Chris said, it's definitely a dance. And then there's also this transition where Crypto comes in and saves Superman, and he's being sucked into the black hole. And the heroic moment where it goes from sound effects leading to music, and to not feel the bottom drop out when the effects go away. That was challenging too, to keep the weight and the energy going.
Well, and also the big heroic thing at the end of it is that he's blowing air out of his mouth, which isn't a terrifically loud sound. How do you find room for... it was a really well-crafted scene that everything worked. It's an impressive feat. I'm wondering if I can ask all of you maybe about this. James Gunn, the director of this film, is not only the director of this film, he's also the head of DC Studios. He's done interviews where he's talked about while he's directing this film, he's also writing episodes of other things. How much time does he have for the sound team? How much interaction do you get with him to put stuff by him? And how much time is he on stage during the mix? And maybe even Lee, how much time ahead of hitting record do you get with him to plan stuff out? Maybe Lee go first?
James is so busy on the set in constant conference with the people who are in his immediate camp, which we refer to as Video Village. So the numbers of times that I basically come into that world are infrequent. There are some things that require much discussion when we're in environments where I have to set systems up so that we've got the playback of the various TVs that are showing broadcasts inside Lex's headquarters. All that stuff is practical. So we talk about that, how that's going to work. We talk about overlaps. For the most part, talk about things as needed, but it's not a frequent occurrence. I'm sure that there's much more that goes on with James in post.
This is typical for final mixes, is that you spend a day or two or whatever it is shaping a reel, and you're usually with the picture editors when you're doing that. And then the director will come in and we'll do playbacks and take notes, and then move on to the next reel, and the next reel, and that's kind of how you do it. And then you go back and do those notes on those reels and bring the director back in, and kind of with a finer grain of sandpaper sort of approach. So that is sort of the post final mix production. So yeah, James is definitely available for us for all of that. Early on in the sound design phase, nobody responds to an email quicker than James Gunn. It's kind of astounding how quick on the draw he is. So you can ask him questions and get responses pretty much immediately, whether it's an idea or you just want to send him thoughts, and he'll give you feedback. All that's he's pretty responsive with that sort of thing.
Yeah, I would say on the mix side, every mix takes on its own sort of ecology, if you will. And on this one, it was evident that James really didn't have time to hang out and deal with the minutia. So we needed to make sure that for Tim and I, that when we hit go as a playback on a reel, that we were feeling really confident that by and large, 98% of the big events were playing in such a way that he could respond. Because you really have to respect his time. And you know that he's got a very limited amount of time with us. And so we have to make the time he's actually sitting with us really be productive. And we don't want him to have to waste time with stuff that's elementary. So really it's about getting the reel playing as well as we can, given having Dave and Katie give us guidance from what they've learned through the process up until then, and also leaning on the picture editors, being that they've sat with James in the cutting room and talked about some of these concepts. So Tim and I are trying to get as much of that information as we can so that we can make decisions based on that information, so that we present the reel in such a way that he can immediately give us notes that are substantial and respecting his time that he's giving her.
He was pretty frequently coming from another playback from Peacemaker or some DC meeting, and had a window for us. Here's some feedback, and do that, and I'll see it again next time. And fortunately, we went through some temp mix process as well, so we knew conceptually what the arc was and the scope and what worked and didn't work. Of course, the music's completely different in the final, which changes everything.
Earlier, David said that the river pie should sound, I'm going to screw up the quote because I haven't been able to go back and get it, but
Angry numbers was one thing he said. Complex integers was another thing he said. A hostile math equation.
hostile, there we go. Are those the kind of notes he normally gives that like are just kind of more esoteric?
It varies. I wouldn't say that's like a blanket thing, but I think that sort of his way of saying, this is what I have in my head. This is what comes to mind. Here's some direction. And now let's see what you can get. Like, give me some ideas, some options. So that it's an opening to a dialogue is what that is, that kind of direction. And so that's what we did.
That's awesome. Obviously, James Gunn is known for his use of music in films, needle drops, I guess. Let's talk about the fight when Mr. Terrific and Lois Lane land at the camp. There's amazing technology going on, and it's all from the POV of inside this bubble that is created. But the music starts off as source, becomes full range, and then goes back to source in a very comedic way. Maybe we can take apart that scene. Lee, what was it like on set? Was that one continuous shot for Lois Lane, or how did that work?
Oh, there's so many pieces of that because, we've got stunt people who are being suspended like on rubber bands who are dropping in and out of frame. It's, such a funny sequence. Not as much on Superman as on the Guardians films, but James decides what the music is ahead of time. We have a complete playlist of everything that's been decided to be in the movie, and it's always available on set. So in that scene, of course, we're playing music the whole time and drop it out as necessary to keep clean dialogue. But the rest of the time, it's just full bore out on the sand, hiding the speakers inside tents and wherever we can get enough volume on the set to get everybody moving, but at the same time, staying out of the shots that are literally looking everywhere.
Katie, how do you deal with dialogue if there's music on set?
Well, fortunately for me, Lee does a great job at isolating the labs to a point where I can still, even if there's some music behind it, I can still clean it out. It's always a challenge. Some shots, not so good. Some, just depends.
We always try, it's just one of those things that, depending on what's happening at the time, it's not like we're going to go back and do anything again. And the main thing is that the energy needs to be what James needs on the set to get the scene in the can, as it were.
Yeah, and also there's a little bit of helpful sound effects that are at reasonably high volume to hide behind.
If you looked at a map of how much time we spent anywhere mixing any section of the film, that would definitely be one of the places where we spent a lot of time. Although thinking back, there's a lot of places we spent a lot of time. On the sound effects side, we were not trying to hit every single sound effect. We were being kind of picking and choosing. And I remember when I first started that, I looked at it, there's so much going on, and I was like, oh, what am I going to do here? And I looked at Dave, and Dave said, you know what? This is what we need to focus on, and then we don't need to worry about that. And it did evolve over the process of the mix. It's a great movie moment in that all worlds have to play here. And when I say all worlds, I'm saying dialogue, music, and effects. And every department has a role to play. And the great thing is that it's all kind of in fun and celebrating the absurdity of this bubble. I don't know. It was really fun. And one thing I really liked was that at the end, Tim came up with this way of getting us out of it. That was a lot of fun. Maybe you could describe that. What you did.
Oh, yeah.
There.
Yeah, that was a kind of a last minute change that we did because it once it went full range, it basically just faded out until Lois gets to the tent for it was like that for a long time. And the change to do this hard cut to Futz, I think that was James's idea. I can't remember who came up with the idea. And that's what I wound up landing on was just this sort of really quick warp into Futz on the cut.
It's when the shield disappears.
And Mr. Terrific is...
Yeah, it's like a flip of a switch, and it goes back to saucy Futz sound.
And then walking up to before it goes full range, I have 4 or 5 Futzes playing that are all localized to the golf cart and the radio on the table and the horns and so it features the different Futzes as you walk by all the characters in the scene. Fortunately, I had stems for that song, so that was helpful.
It's always amazing and fulfilling when sound can get a joke through like that like it isn't kind of in the script as a joke, like it's just this extra little level that sound can add to get the audience giggling. And for me, that's always one of my most satisfying moments, when you can get the crowd to giggle on something that wasn't quite expected.
Kind of speaks to the character of Mr. Terrific in terms of who he is as a character. And it also lets Lois play this sort of like, what's going on here kind of thing that she does so well in the film.
Comedy is a big part of this film, compared to recent Superman movies that we've had that have been very serious and you would almost say dour. This is a fun movie. We never lose the sense of fun, even in the big action sequences. There's always acid bursting off someone's body, making them just a floating head. There's lots of comedic moments. One of the fun moments is also during the kaiju sequence, which is an absolute baddie sequence. It's completely ludicrous, but so much fun, is when the Green Lantern arrives and we finally start seeing some of his powers, and we get this bizarre thing that he creates that's just poking the giant kaiju in the eye over and over and over again. Maybe we can talk a bit about the role of sound to sell the comedy in that moment. I guess, David, maybe you might be the one to start with.
Yeah, we just kind of went a bit Looney Tunes with that piece right there, because it is so over the top, cartoon Bugs Bunny sort of moment right there, where he creates this over-engineered contraption. Pop Girl mashes him in the eye with her mace, and
while she's complaining,
and
getting blinked to death.
Right.
Yeah. All the fun Green Lantern sounds, and it sort of devolves into this like cartoony boinky sound with a little squishy eyeball warbles.
I remember mixing that scene. I like the Green Lantern sound so much, and this is something you should never do as an effects mixer, but I did play them a little loud because they were sort of, they have a organic synthetic quality, if that can be a term, that was really fun and didn't hurt, and I just enjoyed playing it kind of prominently, and then I realized, yeah, that was not the way to go. I mean, they need to tuck in there and be part of the tapestry of everything else that's going on. I do remember playing that scene for the composer at one point, and I think he was thinking maybe it would be a little bit more music.
I don't think he was as enthusiastic.
Yeah, we got there in the end, and it just plays so fun. I mean, as you say, it's an absurd scene, and so the sounds just help kind of drive home that entertainment value so well. Yeah.
Another really funny moment for sound is at the very end when we first meet Supergirl. She arrives and Krypto runs and jumps on her. And when she lands, it's the hardest hitting thing in the entire movie almost. Like, she hits the ground hard. And she's just laughing. But, like, because you hurt her so much, she's Supergirl, obviously, you can't hurt her. But, like, that got a good laugh out of me as well. I thought that was a really creative use of sound as well.
I remember that scene, and I thought, no, really, we're not going to hit it that hard, are we? But, yeah, we were. and the funny thing is that he doesn't even respond to it.
Yes.
He just giggles. As you noticed in the film, I mean, there are moments that are uber loud intentionally, not like to the point of being painful, but to really sell that, obviously Superman punches and things like that really need to take the track for a moment.
Krypton is super powered, and fun little paw jabs and things are would probably kill a human. But he doesn't know any better because he's a little goofball.
Well, we've talked a lot about big action sequences. Another kind of standout moment in the film is just Superman and Lois Lane doing the interview in the apartment. It's quite a long scene for a superhero movie to be a 2-part dialogue scene, but it sets up the entire rest of the film, and it kind of explains their relationship and also their relationship with the world. Lee, do you want to kind of explain to me how that scene was on set and what the challenges were?
Glad you said how it was on set, because it was in fact a set, Lois's apartment. And the other important note is James decided to throw numbers 1 and 2 right into the fire, because that was day 1 and 2. So we started off with them toe to toe with their characters in all the aspects of their dramatic range. Multiple cameras, as we often do, because you want to have as much coverage for the spontaneity. Make sure that you have opposing angles. There's the typical challenges we have on set with multiple cameras and reflections and all those fun things. But we work well with the camera department. My frontline, the boom operators, both of them are on set on each of the characters. Everyone's laved. We've got plants when necessary. And it was a great scene. I was looking forward to it because we had I was on the screen tests. So we had seen different permutations of possible Clark and Lois's. So it was thrilling to be there day one with with the choices James made, which were, I think, absolutely brilliant for the film.
Katie, for the dialogue edit of that, they're talking over top of each other a lot during that sequence. Can you kind of explain how you dealt with that challenge?
That was actually the first scene that I cut as well for the picture department, because James was concerned to make sure that the overlaps that he had envisioned would all work, because they are talking over the top of each other. Fortunately for me, Lee had covered generally with two booms, both, each character, as well as labs and sometimes additional placement mics, as he mentioned. So I had a lot of microphones to play with. It does take time then to weed through all that, but it meant that, if they do start to talk over the top of each other at the end of words and all that sort of thing, I can kind of switch to a different mic to get the end of the word clear, so that if it's been recut in a different way, it's seamless to an audience. You can't hear it. You can't hear the change. Obviously, all those tracks, once they're whittled down and so forth, they go to Tim when we premix, and then he was able to refine that. And we used a lot of the room mics, even when they were kind of off mic and the other side of the room, because it provided a mono room reverb to keep it all sounding kind of natural. And especially once they start to project a bit more, it's sort of the sound bounces and it gets quite lively, but it feels real that way.
Tim, do you want to talk about tackling the mix on that scene?
Yeah, definitely. This is one of my favorite types of scenes to mix. Really well-performed dialogue scene with great recordings. It just sucks me into the movie. It's the heart of the movie to me. Lee and I had talked about this earlier. I didn't realize it was a set because of the way the boom sounded. I thought that, okay, they went on location, scouted this New York-ish apartment that really is sort of another character in the scene. And so that reverb and those reflections, I think they add to the performances, and you can feel how dynamic the actors are.
That scene is a classic scene for the effects side, where we have to be very sparse, but we can't be too sparse. And mixing that and being aware of every single off-screen sound that had to sort of sit in there and sell the metropolis outside, but never be, encroaching on the dialogue in any way. I find those actually a lot more difficult than you would think.
And the set was designed to sell that, because they're looking out through the glass doors. You're seeing there's a balcony. So there's a sense of space that's part of that interior set that was built by our production designer to help pull the sense of that there was outside. Even though it's not featured, it's there in the background. You feel that there's more than just a typical apartment in a city.
And there's a shot where Superman stands up when the conversation gets heated, and the camera's a low angle, and you can see the ceiling in the room, and you really feel in the boom that plaster reflection, and it's a beautiful thing.
I wonder if we can talk for a minute about the dynamics on the mix stage between Tim, Katie, David, and Chris. So David, you've cut all the sounds. You're in love with all the sounds you're delivering, but you're also a re-recording mixer. How much space are you giving Chris when he's mixing this? Are you over his shoulder, or are you at the back of the room? What's the dynamic here?
I know better than the fact to mix Chris Boys. Are you kidding me? Have you seen his trophy case?
Yeah, exactly. Chris, do you like having someone in the room that's been on the faders as well? Or?
Oh, completely. I mean, look, these mixes are becoming more and more complex. First of all, I need to know, not just from content, but from mix concept, anything that Dave has gained knowledge on. I need to get I need to get that information as well. So there's that. I believe the mix stage for the supervisors and mixers is meant to be a collaborative team. And so I've got no ego, and I will ask Dave questions, and I celebrate that relationship. And Dave's really good about it. He doesn't backseat drive, but he's got opinions, and I respect them. And I know that usually when he has a strong opinion about something, it's something that I should really listen to and build off of, because it just helps the track. And I've been on mixes where there isn't that sort of camaraderie. We all know what we're doing. We all have our respective jobs to do, but they interlace constantly in the mixing process. And to get the best track, you have to have a collaborative crew that's helping each other out to solve the equation that's in front of you at any given time sonically. On the effects side, we've really gotten into a world where we're virtual. There is now a hybrid process that's happening between the sound effects editors, the sound supervisor, the sound designer, and the re-recording mixer. And if those relationships are not respected and each component working together, you're going to get dragged down in the weeds. And this show is a classic show where you have not got the time to have that happen. So building a better track is about being a collaborative crew.
Yeah, definitely. We all got along great. It's we've all been on that one where you don't, and it's not fun. But we had a really good time, and Katie and I have known each other for years, and Chris and Dave, and it's a good vibe on the mix stage. And we're all willing to throw out ideas and willing to add things or take things out or let the other side lead. It's a good process.
I would say on the sound effects side as well, worth mentioning, we had Dave there, obviously, all the time. We also had his effects editor, J.R. Grubbs, one of many effects editors. And J.R. was able to, because you can imagine these mixes become this really complicated map with stuff going everywhere. And JR his management style is really coherent. And he was able to say, for lack of a better terminology, take a right here, don't go down that lane, be careful of this. And that's also a real key part of the equation.
Don't solo that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's all hands on deck. Everybody's got a role, but they intersect a lot.
Katie, what's your conversation with Tim like about how you're going to deliver the tracks ahead of time? Does he give you a template?
Well, with Tim, I got a template from him, but also Tim is quite flexible too. We had conversations about it as to what was a good layout, and then we also even modified on the day based on needing to keep certain things and certain food groups together, whether it's all the different futzes and voice treatments and all of that sort of stuff. It's kind of an ongoing dialogue, I think, of its own to make sure that things are in the tracks in the places that Tim would expect them to be, especially if he has to mix on the fly when we've got just a few minutes with James and need to modify something, So, yeah, we talked about it beforehand and continued to adjust it as needed.
Tim, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think Katie talked about a layout that she thought made sense, and then I made a Pro Tools session that worked with that, with the caveat, feel free to change anything that you need to. And that evolved. I think we had that going for Temp 1, and then we sort of evolved it from there to the final from what we learned from that, things that James didn't want to do mostly. And I final mix on the Neve, so you get a little bit more locked into a template than all Pro Tools mix when you get to that stage. But it was pretty sussed out by then. But as far as needing to add things to the desk in the middle of a mix, it gets a little more complicated than just make a new track. The console sounds great, so it's worth it.
Where was this film mixed?
Warner Brothers Stage 9 in Burbank.
And Lee, you mentioned earlier that the kaiju scene was in Cleveland, I believe. Where else did you travel for this?
The production started out actually as a kind of splinter pre-production team where we went up to Svalbard, which is an archipelago in Norway, for the scene where Superman, loses the fight, winds up being thrown into the Arctic or Antarctic, as it reads in the story, and that's where we meet Crypto for the first time. Crypto saves him, but that was rather than done, on sets. We built the set for his lair, but the rest of it was a small team where we basically went documentary style. No generators. Very small team of camera effects, sound, makeup, hair, and the cast members, which we had actually a bunch of them because we are introduced to Lex's team when they come up to get into the lair. So that was a fabulous shoot because we got there just after they had come out of their darkness. And so everybody in town was happy that the sun was back out and we had northern lights. And it was one of those perks that you get after decades of being in the film business. Every once in a while, you pat yourself, that this is one of the perks we get spending our life on set. They occasionally take us to these amazing places. Yeah, so that we did that. We did the farm, which is supposed to be Midwest, was done in Georgia. Speaking of locations in Georgia, Jaranpur was also at a quarry in Georgia. The Hall of Justice is actually Cincinnati. That was critical that we got to that because that's been established. Maybe Mr. Terrific's garage was an add-on, but the interior is well established, and we made sure that we left from Cleveland to Cincinnati specifically for the Hall of Justice.
I'm glad you mentioned Mr. Terrific's garage. Another big laugh in the film. That was a hilarious moment. Thank you very much for talking to me today. This was really fun. All the sounds were amazing, and I hope we get to talk again one day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thanks, Tim.
As the new year begins, Sound Ideas is offering its largest sale to date. For a limited time, receive 55% off professionally recorded sound effects and music libraries. This New Year promotion applies across their esteemed catalog, making it an ideal moment to expand or update your professional collection with authentic audio and a proven standard of quality. The Sound Ideas New Year's sale is available now for a limited time, so go visit sound-ideas.com right away. Tonebenders is produced by me, Timothy Muirhead. Theme music is by Jim Guthrie. You can reach me via email through info@tonebenderspodcast.com. Follow Tonebenders on Instagram to stay on top of new episodes. If you like the show, you can help us out by spreading the word to your friends and colleagues, or leave us a tip. Just go to tonebenderspodcast.com and click support.